Dr. Elena Reyes slipped her scanner back into the pocket of her lab coat and approached the Secretary-General, who was already lifting one of the iridescent morsels toward his lips. "Sir," she whispered urgently, "I strongly recommend we analyze these substances before consumption. My preliminary scans show molecular structures unlike anything in our databases." The Secretary-General gave her a sideways glance, his political instincts weighing scientific caution against diplomatic opportunity. The gathered dignitaries were watching, cameras were rolling, and the Zexorians' compound eyes reflected expectation. "Doctor, we've been preparing for first contact for decades. Let's not insult our guests with suspicion at the very first exchange." He smiled at Ambassador Klust and bit into the shimmering delicacy. Elena watched in professional horror as dozens of world leaders followed suit, placing the alien morsels into their mouths. The consistency was somewhere between gelatin and bread, dissolving slowly on the tongue. A journalist nearby closed her eyes in apparent bliss. "It's like honeyed saffron with an electric aftertaste," murmured the French cultural attaché, reaching for another piece. "Magnifique." Ambassador Klust's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sound the human translators rendered as polite appreciation, but which Elena, who had studied xenolinguistics as a secondary specialty, recognized contained frequencies indicating agitation or possibly alarm. While the diplomats consumed more of the offered delicacies, Elena noticed the Zexorian attendants exchanging subtle antenna touches, their equivalent of whispered conversation. She edged closer to an abandoned food cart and managed to secure a sample in a specimen container, while everyone was distracted by the Secretary-General's impromptu toast to new friendships across the stars. Chef Marcus Wong, standing nearby with the cultural delegation, caught her eye and raised an eyebrow. Unlike the politicians, he had been watching the aliens rather than the food. He approached casually, champagne flute in hand. "Something's off with our insect friends, isn't it?" he murmured, his back to the Zexorians. They seemed surprised. Not pleased surprised, shocked surprised. Elena nodded almost imperceptibly. The molecular structure of these compounds should be problematic for human consumption. Yet everyone seems fine. Better than fine, actually. The Secretary-General was now escorting Ambassador Klust toward the prepared stage for formal statements, the diplomat's gait oddly stiff, even for an insectoid species. The translator devices echoed the ambassador's clicking speech. "We are most gratified that our humble nutritional offerings meet with your approval." Behind them, one of the Zexorian aides was surreptitiously examining a device resembling an ornate bracelet. Elena's enhanced vision implant zoomed in on the holographic display, chemical formulas, and what appeared to be biological readings scrolled rapidly. "Mr. Wong," she whispered, "I need to get this sample to my lab immediately. Would you mind creating a distraction?" The chef grinned. "Culinary or theatrical distraction? Anything that isn't a diplomatic incident." Wong nodded and moved toward the central banquet table with purpose. Elena watched as he expertly engaged a cluster of Zexorian attendants with animated questions about flavor profiles and preparation techniques, his genuine enthusiasm for gastronomy requiring no pretense. As she slipped away toward the exit, Elena's comm unit vibrated. A message from her research partner at the Xenobiology lab. Satellite monitoring detects multiple cloaked vessels in Earth orbit. Energy signatures match Zexorian scout ship, but much larger. What the hell is going on at that reception? Elena quickened her pace. The answer, she suspected, was dissolving on the tongues of Earth's leadership even now. Chef Marcus Wong watched in fascination as the Zexorian delegation huddled together, in what appeared to be an emergency conference at the far end of the reception hall. Their exoskeletons had shifted from ceremonial iridescent blue to a mottled orange-green that his cultural briefing had not covered. "Whatever you detected in that food has them seriously rattled," he murmured to Dr. Reyes, who had returned from dropping her samples at the lab. "They keep looking at us like we're supposed to be dead by now." Elena nodded, discreetly scanning the room with her medical implant. Heart rates, blood pressure, neurological activity, all normal across the board. If anything, dopamine levels are elevated. People are genuinely enjoying what my preliminary analysis suggests contains compounds similar to tetrodotoxin and several alkaloids that should cause immediate respiratory failure. The UN Secretary-General approached with Ambassador Claus reluctantly in tow. "Dr. Reyes, Chef Wong, our honoured guest has expressed particular interest in human culinary traditions. Perhaps you could satisfy his curiosity." Wong stepped forward with professional charm. "I'd be delighted. Ambassador, the dishes you've shared have fascinating flavour profiles. The balance of sweetness with that electric tingling sensation is unlike anything in Earth cuisine. Is that achieved through fermentation or a particular cooking technique?" The ambassador's translator device emitted a series of clicks and pauses before rendering. "Our preparation methods are complex." The biosynth. A sharp click interrupted. "The ingredients require careful handling." "I'd love to learn more about your process," Wong continued enthusiastically. "That third dish with the purple filaments had notes reminiscent of our ghost peppers, but with an almost metallic finish that lingered. Brilliant composition." The Zexorian's compound eyes rotated fractionally toward his aides, who were frantically manipulating communication devices. One approached and exchanged rapid-fire clicks with the ambassador. Dr. Reyes's translator implant, more sophisticated than the standard diplomatic versions, caught fragments. Complete failure of compound B7. Enzyme neutralization unprecedented. Abort primary directive. The ambassador's posture stiffened further, nearly vibrating with tension. "We are gratified that our nutritional offerings please human sensory organs. Most species find our flavors too intense." "Oh, we humans are notorious for seeking out intense flavors," Wong replied, oblivious to the undertones Dr. Reyes was detecting. "Different cultures compete to create the spiciest dishes. We deliberately eat foods containing capsaicin, which triggers our pain receptors. Some consider it pleasurable." The Zexorianade's exoskeleton paled to an almost translucent white. The ambassador's mandibles clicked rapidly before the translator smoothed his response. "You deliberately consume pain-inducing substances for enjoyment." "Absolutely." Wong grinned. "Many Earth cultures ferment foods until they're technically spoiled, age meats until they develop mold, or deliberately introduce bacteria to milk. These processes create some of our most prized delicacies." Elena watched the subtle shifts in the alien's posture, the xenobiology equivalent of horror. Her communicator vibrated with an incoming message from her lab. "Preliminary analysis complete. Sample contains modified neurotoxins that should be fatal to all carbon-based life. Concentration suggests the deliberate weaponization, not accidental contamination. Elena, what the hell are we dealing with?" She caught Wong's eye and gave a subtle nod toward the exit. As they excused themselves, Ambassador Claus was urgently conversing with his staff, their antenna patterns displaying what her training identified as confusion, fear, and most concerning, rapidly shifting tactical calculations. "Chef Wong," she said quietly as they walked away, I believe we just told them that their deadliest weapons are our favorite condiments. Dr. Elena Rees adjusted the sensitivity on her molecular analyzer as Chef Marcus Wong paced the laboratory, scrolling through social media on his tablet. "It's gone viral," he said, shaking his head in amazement. #Zexorian Spice is trending worldwide. People are offering ridiculous amounts of money for leftovers from the reception. A black market is already forming. Elena frowned at the holographic molecular structure rotating above her workstation. This compound here, it's similar to tetrodotoxin, but with an alien twist. In humans, our unique liver enzymes break it down into harmless components that stimulate taste receptors. But for the Zexorians, it would do what? Wong looked up from his tablet. Essentially liquefy their neural pathways. It's not just poisonous to them, it's catastrophically lethal. She zoomed in on another molecular chain. And this one has properties similar to capsaicin, but magnified tenfold. To us, it creates that pleasant tingling sensation everyone's raving about. Wong set down his tablet and approached the hologram. "So when I told the ambassador, we deliberately eat spicy food for pleasure. You might as well have told him we drink battery acid for fun." Elena's lips quirked into a smile, despite the seriousness of the situation. "The question is, why serve us food that would kill their own species?" Wong's eyes widened with realization. They weren't serving us their food. They were serving us what they thought was our poison. Helena's secure line chimed. "Dr. Reyes," came the Secretary-General's voice, "the Zexorian delegation has requested a formal culinary exchange program as a gesture of cultural goodwill. They specifically asked for you and Chef Wong to lead the human team." After the call ended, Wong tapped the rotating molecule, his chef's mind already cataloging flavor possibilities. They're trying to figure out how we survived, buying time while they reformulate their approach. Almost certainly, Elena agreed, but it gives us the same opportunity. We need to understand their biology better and what their actual food consists of. Wong's tablet pings with notifications. "Speaking of food, my restaurant inbox is flooded with reservation requests from people demanding authentic Zexorian cuisine. I've never seen anything like it." Elena pulled up another scan. "I've been analyzing my replication attempts. Earth ingredients can create similar effects, but without the exact Zexorian components, the flavor profile isn't quite right." Wong scrolled through his notes. "What if we combine Sichuan peppercorns for the numbing effect, with trace amounts of fuga for that neurotoxin tingle, and perhaps some form of fermented chili? That might work for the basic profile." Elena nodded, "but there's something else in their compounds, almost like a synthetic umami that binds everything together." Wong's expression became thoughtful. "I have connections who could source exotic ingredients discreetly. And I have a fully equipped xenobiochemistry lab." Elena smiled. "Shall we create the world's first authentic human Zexorian fusion cuisine? For science, of course," Wong added with a wink. As they began formulating recipes, Elena's secure terminal chimed with an encrypted message from UN intelligence. "Multiple Zexorian vessels have repositioned in orbit. New unidentified cargo transfers detected. Possible biological material. Update threat assessment." Elena glanced at Wong, who was enthusiastically sketching menu concepts, then back at the alert. The Zexorians were clearly escalating, but in what direction? Were they preparing a new attack, or simply responding to humanity's unexpected enthusiasm for their failed first attempt? "Assessment ongoing," she typed back. "Recommend continued diplomatic engagement while we gather more information, and perhaps stock up on antacids. This might get interesting. The line outside First Contact Fusion stretched around the block for the third week in a row. Chef Marcus Wong moved through his kitchen with practiced efficiency, directing his staff as they carefully measured precise amounts of what the health department had reluctantly classified as xenobiological flavor enhancers. Table 7 wants the Zexorian Supreme with extra neurotoxin crumble, called his sous chef. Are we cleared for that level? Marcus checked the customer's signed waiver on the tablet. Medical screening is green across all markers. They're approved for Category 3 compounds. Across town, in her laboratory at the United Nations Xenobiological Research Center, Dr. Elena Reyes observed a controlled reaction between Zexorian compounds and human saliva. The resulting chemical transformation produced a faint blue glow and released aromatic compounds that made her research assistants lean forward involuntarily. "Fascinating," she murmured, making notes. The enzymes in our digestive system don't just neutralize these toxins, they transform them into flavor enhancers. No wonder people can't get enough. Her secure terminal chimed with an incoming transmission from the orbiting Zexorian diplomatic vessel. Ambassador Closed's face appeared, his compound eyes reflecting the ship's harsh lighting. "Dr. Reyes, we are concerned about the increased human demand for our culinary offerings. Our High Command has authorized delivery of our specialty reserves." Elena recognized the careful phrasing for what it was. The Zexorians were escalating, bringing in stronger toxins from their biological weapons stockpile. "That's most generous, Ambassador. The cultural exchange has been tremendously successful. Chef Wong's restaurant can barely keep up with demand." The ambassador's mandibles twitched. "Yes, most unexpected. Our nutritional scientists wish to observe human consumption of these new delicacies for cultural understanding. Of course, we'd be delighted to host them. Perhaps they could observe the special tasting event at the UN next week." After ending the transmission, Elena immediately called Marcus. "They're bringing in the heavy artillery. Whatever they've got coming makes the first batch look like table salt." "Perfect timing," Marcus replied, the sounds of his busy kitchen in the background. "I've been experimenting with that synthetic umami compound you isolated. Combined with ghost pepper extract and modified pufferfish toxin, I think we've nearly replicated their basic flavor profile using entirely Earth ingredients." "You're serving that to customers?" Elena asked, alarmed. "Small test groups with medical monitoring. The response has been incredible. People describe it as a religious experience. One food critic wrote that it redefines the concept of flavor itself." Elena's assistant appeared at her door, eyes wide. "Doctor, we've just received word from orbital monitoring. The Zexorians have deployed what appears to be a specialized biological containment vessel. It's heading for the landing site now. Inform UN security but maintain protocols," Elena instructed. "And get me everything we have on Zexorian bioweapons capabilities." As she gathered her equipment, her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Just got a reservation for tonight under Supreme Commander Zexcra. Pretty sure that's not a random foodie. Bringing extra scanning equipment." Elena smiled despite the tension. "Absolutely. And make sure to give the Supreme Commander our special house blend. Let's see how they react when they realize we're serving a harmless version of their own bioweapons as the chef's special." Meanwhile, across the solar system, encrypted transmissions bounced between cloaked Zexorian vessels. Phase 3 deployment authorized. If human physiology adapts to this concentration, evacuation of this sector becomes the only logical option. Dr. Elena Rees adjusted her environmental suit's cooling system as she followed the Zexorian food preparation specialist through the gleaming laboratory aboard their orbiting vessel. The air inside her suit was Earth standard, but the ship maintained an atmosphere heavy with methane and trace elements that would be toxic to humans. As you can observe, Doctor, our nutrition synthesis is quite different from your cooking methods, explained Senior Nutritional Engineer Kultok, her translator rendering the clicks and whistles into smooth English. What you call heat destabilizes many of our preferred molecular structures. Elena watched as several Zexorian technicians manipulated what appeared to be living tissue cultures in transparent containers. Bioactive culinary engineering, she murmured appreciatively. You're essentially programming the food at a cellular level. Precisely. Kultok's compound eyes rotated toward Elena with what she had learned to recognize as scientific respect. Though we find it remarkable that humans apply destructive forces like fire and still achieve complex flavor profiles. In the adjacent chamber, visible through a transparent barrier, Chef Marcus Wong was demonstrating fermentation to a group of fascinated Zexorian culinary scientists, all wearing protective gear to shield themselves from the human microbes they considered hazardous. The lactobacillus transforms the cabbage completely, he explained, opening a jar of kimchi that was safely contained in a specialized ventilation hood. The bacteria create entirely new flavor compounds through controlled decomposition. The Zexorians' exoskeletons fluttered in what Elena now recognized as expressions of both disgust and scientific curiosity. Their mandibles clicked rapidly as they recorded measurements from the airborne particles. You deliberately cultivate microbial colonies inside your food, asked one, the translator unable to fully mask the horror in the alien's voice. Absolutely. Wong's enthusiasm was undimmed by the alien's reaction. Some of our most prized foods involve controlled rot. Blue cheese, for instance, or aged meats. The microbes break down proteins into new compounds that create deeper, more complex flavors. Elena smiled as she observed the Zexorian's reaction through the barrier. Her research team had made remarkable discoveries about the aliens' biology during these exchanges. Their digestive systems had evolved in an environment with minimal bacterial presence, making them hypersensitive to compounds that humans had co-evolved with for millions of years. Kultok guided Elena toward another section of the laboratory where specialized equipment analyzed molecular structures. We have been studying your species' remarkable enzymatic capabilities. These compounds, she gestured toward a holographic display of complex molecules, would cause immediate cellular breakdown in any life form from our sector of the galaxy. Yet humans convert them into pleasurable sensory experiences. Our evolutionary history involved constant exposure to plant toxins, Elena explained. Plants evolved chemicals to avoid being eaten, and animals evolved mechanisms to detoxify them. Humans pushed this further by deliberately seeking out certain toxins for their sensory effects: caffeine, capsaicin, alcohol, theobromine. Consuming neural disruptors for pleasure, Kultok's mandibles clicked in what Elena had come to recognize as amazement. No wonder your species adapted so readily to our initial offerings. Elena carefully avoided acknowledging the implied admission about the poisoning attempt. The diplomatic fiction that these had been genuine culinary exchanges from the beginning remained officially intact. On her secure communication channel, a message from UN intelligence appeared. Zexorian fleet movements show significant withdrawal from Earth orbit. Multiple vessels redirected to their home system. Threat assessment decreased to level 3. Elena smiled slightly. I was wondering, Kultok, If you might be interested in a joint research publication on cross-species digestive biochemistry, there could be significant medical applications. The Zexorian scientist's exoskeleton brightened to a deep blue of intellectual excitement. Most agreeable, Dr. Reyes. Your species' biological resilience has changed many of our previous assumptions. About what constitutes a viable target for conquest, Elena mentally completed, but kept the thought to herself as she nodded pleasantly. Toxic Delight's orbital restaurant rotated slowly against the backdrop of Earth's blue curve, its distinctive honeycomb structure housing 17 different atmospheric chambers arranged around a central hub. Chef Marcus Wong stood at the observation window of the human section, watching as a delegation of methane-breathing Valkyrians entered through their specialized airlock. 3rd new species this month, remarked Ambassador Klust, who had become a regular fixture at the restaurant. His exoskeleton had been customized with what Wong recognized as the Zexorian equivalent of formal diplomatic regalia. They cancelled their scheduled military exercises in your outer solar system to secure this reservation. Wong raised an eyebrow. Military exercises, that's what they were calling it. The ambassador's mandibles clicked in what Wong had learned was embarrassment. A survey mission with weapons. Standard protocol for discovering new species. He gestured toward the arriving aliens. Now they come for your ghost pepper ice cream instead. In the restaurant's central hub, visible through transparent barriers, Dr. Elena Reyes was conducting what appeared to be casual conversation with representatives from 5 different species. In reality, she was engaged in delicate negotiations over mining rights in the asteroid belt. Perhaps we could continue this discussion over a sampling of Earth delicacies, she suggested as the talks reached an impasse. Chef Wong has prepared tasting portions suitable for each of your atmospheric requirements. The Draxin ambassador, whose silicon-based biology required temperatures that would melt lead, rippled his heat shield in agreement. Most acceptable. We have heard of these capsaicin crystals that humans consume for pleasure. Within 30 minutes, all parties were sampling their custom-prepared Earth delicacies, their body language indicating various degrees of amazement and pleasure. The tension that had permeated the negotiations dissolved into appreciative chemical signatures and translator-mediated exclamations. Later, as Elena joined Marcus in the human section, she showed him the signed preliminary agreement on her tablet. Unanimous approval. The asteroid mining treaty is moving forward, with Earth securing 20% more favorable terms than our initial request. Amazing what sharing a meal can accomplish, Marcus said, watching as the different species continued their animated discussions in their separate atmospheric chambers. Though I still can't believe the Draxians actually enjoyed wasabi paste in their sulfur dioxide environment. Their sensors must work completely differently from ours. It creates crystalline structures in their perception chambers, Elena explained. Something like what we would call a pleasant tingling sensation. A notification appeared on her secure terminal. Interesting. The Galactic Council has officially upgraded Earth's classification from pre-interstellar/potential resource to protected trading partner/biohazard warning. Marcus laughed. Biohazard warning? That's flattering. It means other species are advised not to attempt conquest or colonization due to extreme biological incompatibility risks, Klust explained, approaching with 3 glasses of champagne. Essentially, you are too dangerous to invade, but too valuable to ignore. And it's all because we liked your poison, Marcus said, accepting a glass. The ambassador's compound eyes reflected the Earth visible through the viewport. The High Command still reviews the First Contact mission as our most significant tactical error in 3 centuries. I, however, have been promoted for establishing unprecedentedly productive diplomatic relations. To failed poisonings and successful partnerships, Elena proposed, raising her glass. And to the unexpected benefits of terrible miscalculations, Celeste added, his translator rendering a perfect approximation of ironic humor. As they toasted, 3 more ships appeared from hyperspace near the restaurant's coordinates, each broadcasting reservation requests and culinary inquiries. Word had spread through the Galactic community. If you wanted to understand this bizarre, toxic-consuming species called humans, you started with their inexplicable and fascinating relationship with food. Ambassador Klust's exoskeleton cycled through several shades of blue before settling on a deep indigo that Dr. Elena Reyes recognized as profound discomfort. The private dining chamber aboard the Zexorian research vessel offered a stunning view of Earth below, though neither was focused on the scenery at this moment. "How long have you known?" Klust asked, his translator rendering his clicks into a subdued tone. Elena sipped her tea, which the Zexorians had carefully prepared according to human specifications. "Definitively, since the 3rd week after your arrival. The molecular structures were too precisely targeted to be accidental. The escalating potency of each new culinary offering removed any doubt." The ambassador's compound eyes rotated to focus on different parts of her face. An assessment behavior she had learned indicated the alien was searching for deception or aggression. Finding neither, his posture relaxed fractionally. "Yet you continued the exchange program. You expanded it. You personally advocated for deeper Zexorian-human cooperation." Elena nodded, because despite the initial misunderstanding, we discovered something far more valuable than conquest or retribution: complementary biology. Your species' expertise in molecular engineering, combined with our adaptive digestive systems, offers possibilities neither civilization had considered. She activated her tablet, displaying images of devastated Zexorian nursery colonies. The fungal plague had consumed entire habitats, leaving nothing but crystallized husks where billions of larvae had once developed. Your delegation's bioweapons researchers are now your leading xenobiologists, she continued, and they've shared with my team the full details of this plague affecting your species. The fungal spores target the same neural pathways that your initial toxins were designed to attack in humans. Understanding dawned in the ambassador's posture. "And your immunity could be the key to developing treatments," Elena finished. "My team has isolated the human enzymes that neutralize the compounds. We believe they can be synthesized and adapted to protect Zexorian neural pathways from the fungal toxins." Ambassador Klust's mandibles clicked rapidly as he processed this information. "You would help us, knowing we came to your world as conquerors." "We came to your restaurant as assassins," said a new voice from the doorway. Supreme Commander Zexkra, the highest-ranking Zexorian military official, entered with Chef Marcus Wong. Unlike the diplomatic staff, the commander's exoskeleton bore the scarred patterns of countless campaigns. Wong grinned. "The commander and I have been having a fascinating conversation about the tactical applications of culinary knowledge." The Supreme Commander's posture conveyed wry amusement. The chef suggests that knowing how to poison someone properly requires understanding what nourishes them. An unexpectedly profound military insight from a food preparer. Elena noted the shift in terminology. No longer nutrition engineer, but chef, a small but significant adoption of human terminology. "We propose a joint research initiative," Elena said, presenting a formal document. "Human biochemists working alongside Zexorian molecular engineers to develop treatments for the fungal plague. In exchange, we request access to Zexorian faster-than-light communication technology." The Supreme Commander's exoskeleton shifted to a deep purple that Elena didn't recognize. You ask for military-grade technology in exchange for saving billions of our young? This is your revenge? Juan laughed. No, it's a fair trade. You get your children, we get to call our families from deep space a bit faster. Besides, how else will we coordinate the Interstellar franchise expansion of Toxic Delights? The tension dissipated as the Commander's translator rendered what could only be described as a surprised laugh. Humans. You turn assassination attempts into business opportunities. And would-be conquerors into partners, Elena added softly. The Commander made a formal gesture, placing both front appendages on the agreement. The High Command will approve this alliance, not out of desperation, though we have that in abundance, but because any species that responds to poisoning by asking for the recipe deserves our respect. The Grand Exhibition Hall of the United Nations Interstellar Complex hummed with activity as representatives from 37 galactic species mingled under the massive transparent dome. Earth's atmosphere remained in the central human section, while specialized environmental chambers arranged around the perimeter accommodated everything from methane breathers to silicon-based life forms requiring temperatures above 500 degrees Celsius. Dr. Elena Reyes adjusted her formal attire, a blend of traditional Earth diplomatic dress with subtle elements of Zexorian ceremonial patterns, as she made her way toward the central stage. 5 years of interstellar diplomacy had transformed her from a cautious xenobiologist into Earth's most respected ambassador to the galactic community. Quite the turnout, remarked Chef Marcus Wong, appearing beside her in his signature fusion chef's coat emblazoned with both human and alien culinary symbols. The Draxians brought their ceremonial taste perceptors. That's like their royal family showing up. Elena smiled. And the Kilarian High Council cancelled their sacred hibernation cycle to attend. Your interstellar reputation continues to grow. Our reputation, Marcus corrected. Without your enzyme research, none of this would have happened. They paused to admire the central display, a holographic projection showing before and after images of the Zexorian nursery colonies. What had once been crystallized husks devastated by fungal plague now teemed with healthy larvae, their exoskeletons gleaming with vitality. Supreme Commander Zexkra approached, accompanied by a delegation of Zexorian scientists whose specialized environmental suits allowed them to move comfortably among the humans. Unlike the military and diplomatic staff, these were the original bioweapons researchers who had designed the toxins intended to eliminate humanity. Dr. Reyes, the commander, greeted formally. The last of the affected colonies has been successfully treated. 17 trillion larvae will now reach maturity because of your enzyme synthesis process. 17 trillion. Marcus whispered. No wonder they were desperate. The commander continued. The High Command has officially redesignated Earth from failed acquisition target to essential alliance partner. This is unprecedented in our 12,000 cycles of expansion. Ambassador Claus joined them, his exoskeleton now bearing the intricate patterns of a high governmental official. The Galactic Council session begins shortly. Are you prepared for the announcement? Elena nodded. The Human Zexorian Biochemical Research Institute has been established and staffed. We're ready to offer our services to any species facing biological challenges. A soft chime indicated the beginning of the formal proceedings. Representatives from across the galaxy took their positions as the Secretary-General welcomed them to Earth. Elena and Marcus moved toward the stage, where they would jointly present the unprecedented alliance that had grown from an attempted poisoning. As they walked, Marcus leaned closer to Elena. I've been meaning to ask, did you ever tell the UN Security Council that we're essentially charging the galaxy for access to our digestive enzymes? Elena smiled diplomatically. I described it as leveraging human biological uniqueness for mutual advantage. Sounds better than selling our stomach acid to aliens. And no one ever proposed retaliating against the Zexorians for trying to poison us. What would be the point? Elena shrugged. We got their fastest ships, their communication technology, and opened trade with 17 new civilizations. All because they failed to kill us with their best bioweapons. That's punishment enough for any military species. As they reached the stage, the vast array of alien representatives fell silent. The Secretary-General introduced them, his voice translating simultaneously into 37 different communication forms. Today marks the official opening of the Galactic Culinary Congress and the announcement of the Human-Zexorian Biochemical Alliance. What began as a simple exchange of food has evolved into the most significant interspecies cooperation in known history. Elena caught Ambassador Klist's compound eyes across the room. They shared a private moment of amusement at the diplomatic understatement of the century. Simple exchange of food indeed. The Zexorian Supreme Commander raised a ceremonial flask containing a swirling liquid that would dissolve most known metals. To the humans, a species whose idea of dinner would be most civilizations' idea of chemical warfare, the galaxy is better for your peculiar biology.